It began as nothing more than a casual night out. My husband and I attended a work party together, laughing, socializing, and enjoying the moment. But I wasn't content with simply being good at being his wife that night. When one of the more charming men from the event invited me to an after party, I didn't pause to think. I told myself it would be just a few hours, nothing serious, and his company was entertaining. I never imagined how fast that choice would spiral beyond my control. 6 hours slipped by in a haze. Drinks kept coming, laughter filled the air, and every glance from him sent a thrill through me that made my heart race. I checked my phone from time to time, but each message from my husband asking where I was stayed unanswered. I brushed off his growing worry, convincing myself it was part of the excitement. In that moment, I felt untouchable, swept up in attention I hadn't realized I was craving. While I was lost in that high, my husband was unraveling. He left the party and searched the city, calling every friend, every bar, every possible after-party spot, desperate for any sign of me. His mind ran through endless possibilities, each more frightening than the last. He couldn't understand why I wasn't replying or how I could disappear without a word. I had no idea how much pain I was causing him while I laughed and flirted with someone else. As the night dragged on, the man beside me grew bolder, moving closer, pushing boundaries I foolishly allowed. I laughed, went along with it, and ignored the sharp stabs of guilt in my chest. At first, it felt intoxicating to be wanted and admired, but beneath that rush, a quiet voice warned me that I was crossing a line and that my husband was out there worried sick. I silenced it. By the early morning hours, exhaustion set in, and reality began to catch up with me. I suddenly understood how far I had gone, how many hours had passed, and how frantic my husband must be. My heart raced as a sense of dread settled over me. What I had treated as harmless fun carried consequences far greater than I had imagined. Every ignored call, every unread message had built a storm I could no longer contain. When I finally walked through the door, I expected anger, shouting, maybe tears. What I didn't expect was the silence and the heaviness in his eyes. As he looked at me, I saw shock, humiliation, and disbelief all at once. His hands were clenched, his face drained of color. For the first time, I understood the impact of my actions in the starkest way possible. He didn't yell, he didn't accuse me right away. He simply stood there watching me, as if trying to process every second I had been gone. The room felt suffocating, the tension thick in the air. I had never seen him like that, so controlled, yet so powerful in his silence. My stomach twisted as I tried to explain, reaching for excuses that sounded hollow even to me. The humiliation on his face mirrored the fear rising inside me. I had always believed I could manage my choices, manipulate moments, and escape small mistakes, but now I faced a raw truth. My actions had consequences far beyond my control. I had underestimated the depth of his love, his loyalty, and how deeply my betrayal could break him. 4 hours passed without either of us speaking. I replayed every laugh, every touch, every hour I had spent away from him. Guilt pressed down on me relentlessly, and for the first time, I truly felt the weight of my recklessness. He sat across from me, calm and unmovable, sorting through his own storm of emotions. I could see him trying to understand how the woman he trusted could vanish into the night without a word. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, steady, and terrifying in its calm. "Do you understand what you've done?" he asked, not in anger, but with a disappointment that cut deeper than anything else. Each word struck like a blow, forcing me to see that I hadn't just let him down, I had shattered his trust. I tried to explain, to justify it, to insist it was nothing more than harmless flirting. My words felt empty against the truth in his eyes. He didn't argue or raise his voice. He simply looked at me and let the silence speak. It was worse than any argument I had imagined. That quiet judgment left me shaking, ashamed, and painfully aware of the damage I had caused. The days that followed blurred together in regret and tension. He avoided me, kept his distance, and spoke only when necessary. I realized that my 6 hours of reckless fun had changed our relationship forever. Every unanswered text, every averted glance, every heavy sigh reminded me of my betrayal. I had created a gap between us that I wasn't sure could ever be closed. Friends and family began to notice, asking questions and exchanging knowing looks as whispers reached my ears. It became clear that my actions hadn't only hurt him, they had humiliated him both publicly and privately. This time, I didn't soften my tone. Threats have consequences. She reached for my hand, desperation replacing arrogance. "Don't do this. I didn't mean it. I was emotional." I shook my head. "You weren't emotional, you were calculating." And for the first time, she understood the weight of those papers. They weren't leverage anymore, they were reality. She followed me as I walked to our bedroom and started packing a bag. "Please, we can fix this," she begged. "We can go to therapy, anything." She clutched my arm, her voice trembling. "I love you." I paused. Once, those words would have melted me. Now they sounded like handcuffs disguised as roses. "You loved control," I said. "You loved the idea of me chasing you, but you never loved me enough to trust me or communicate like an adult." She shook her head violently. "No, that's not true." I gently unwrapped her fingers from around my arm. "Then your actions betrayed your heart." She collapsed onto the bed, sobbing as I zipped my bag. The sound was heartbreaking, but necessary. Not all pain is cruelty. Sometimes it's the only path forward. "What am I going to tell people?" she whispered through her tears. And there it was, the truth behind her fear. Not losing me, losing control, losing image, losing the man she assumed she could always manipulate. "Tell them the truth," I said. "Tell them you brought divorce papers into our home, and I respected your choice." As I headed for the door, she stood trembling behind me. "Please don't go," she whispered, her voice fragile and broken. I turned to face her, the woman I once planned a lifetime with, now staring at the consequences of her own manipulation. "You don't threaten to burn the house down to see if someone loves living in it," I said quietly. "You just end up standing in ashes." She sobbed harder, clutching the signed papers like pieces of her own heart. I didn't slam the door, I didn't yell, I simply walked away. And that silence screamed louder than anything I could have said. A week later, she showed up at my new apartment. No makeup, no pride, just raw regret. "I ruined everything," she whispered. I didn't gloat, I didn't punish, I simply nodded. "Sometimes we don't realize who loves us until we push them too far," she said, her voice trembling. "And sometimes," I replied, "we don't realize what peace feels like until we let go of the person who confused love with power." She reached out as if to touch me, but her hand stopped halfway, realizing the truth. I was gone, not angry, not bitter, just done. As I closed the door gently, she stood frozen in the hallway, holding those papers like a gravestone. She tried to scare me into loving her. Instead, she taught me the power of walking away.